Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name is Lauren Ania. I am an attorney with the law firm of Ania Scanlon and Sirignano, and you are listening to our Facebook Live seminar series. Today's topic is on protecting yourself and your loved ones from financial elder abuse and senior scams. And this is a very important topic. This is something that, regardless of age, you could fall victim to. Scamming, especially now when we're using the computers so often to communicate with our loved ones, see our loved ones, and essentially virtually do everything. There are quite a bit of scams. I'm sure you've all seen on the news, the Zoom pop in, scammers who would come into a Zoom meeting, either a phone or a conference of sorts, or a school classroom, things of that nature. So it does affect everyone, but unfortunately, senior scams is something that is very relevant today, and it's a form of elder abuse. Elder abuse is any type of targeting of individuals who are older, and using their age or inabilities or dependence on others to coerce or trick them into doing something. There are different types of elder abuse. There is emotional elder abuse, physical elder abuse, financial elder abuse. Scams typically fall into the category of financial elder abuse. And why does this happen? So, this often happens because seniors may become emotionally or physically dependent on someone else and allow that someone to then, be in their life. They become dependent on them. And unfortunately, those people might have bad intentions when it comes to taking care of this loved one or what it is that they plan to get out of them. Unfortunately, we've seen situations where a handyman or a home attendant or a child or even a significant other winds up abusing the elderly individual because this person is so dependent on them, and it's easy for them to then get something out of them, whether it's emotionally, physically, or financially. So another reason why we see this predominantly with a elderly population is because sometimes they have lack of consistent and regular contact with loved ones. So especially now, due to social distancing, inability to visit loved ones in their homes and really see how they're living day to day, this might come into play. So let's say that you have an elderly parent who lives alone and you used to visit every week, and you would make sure the mail was in order, the bank accounts were in order, you were able to review the accounts with your parent. And now, due to COVID, you don't get to see them as regularly. Maybe you're not even going inside their home, so you don't know if things have changed, if something has changed within their home. Maybe the bank account has become depleted. Maybe the handyman or the cleaning lady or the home health aide that comes to the home and is now the only person going into the house other than your parents has somehow been able to coerce or take control of your parents' finances. These things unfortunately happen, so having consistent and regular contact with a loved one can be so important in ensuring that financial elder abuse does not occur, as well as physical, seeing spots on someone's arms. God forbid something like that happened if someone was getting pushed or hurt in any sort of way. How can we do this in a COVID-19 world? I know some families, if the elderly parent is comfortable, they might install Nest cameras inside or outside the home, ensuring that your loved one has a video camera and a setup where they can FaceTime with you so that you can see them. Maybe getting access to their bank accounts, whether through having, joint ownership or power of attorney, which I'm going to start talking about a little bit more later. There's different things that we can do in order to ensure consistency and regular contact, even if it's not face to face. These types of individuals might also become susceptible to abuse, senior scams, because of a loss of cognitive ability. They might be in denial that this cognitive decline is occurring. It's not uncommon for a elderly individual to unfortunately misplace money, misplace a check, or think that they're misplacing things because of a cognitive decline when in actuality someone is stealing their money. That could occur. They may be in denial that this decline is occurring, where they think everything is fine. They may not understand that someone is coercing them, or someone who they've befriended is not really their friend but has alternative motives. So it's very important to ensure that you are having contact, having these conversations with your loved ones. So let's turn to talk a little bit more about senior scams in general. For instance, senior scams. What am I talking about when I say senior scams? I'm really talking about the phone calls that you get from those robocalls. I'm talking about things that you might get in the mail that say you've won $100 or $1,000 or $1,000,000. Or it might be phone calls from people that sound like your loved ones saying they're in danger, but it's not your loved ones. So according to the National Council on Aging, senior scams are considered the crime of the 21st century. And this generation is particularly susceptible to senior scams, calls, emails, text messages, because they might have less of a comfort level with the technology and more trust when it comes to believing that the person on the other side either A, has their best interest at heart, or B, is a loved one or family friend of theirs, or C, is an actual creditor. So, they come from a generation where people spoke on the phone about actual situations. You would get a phone call from, someone at your bank asking you a question about your account statement, perhaps, or caring about whether something looks strange on your bank account. So they may have a level of trust. It happens to people of all ages, really. We think when we get a call sometimes that it might be real. And I'll talk about the things that you can do in order to ensure that those calls that you might think are real are actually real. So what are the different categories, let's say, of senior scams? Well, there's identity theft, where someone is trying to take your identity. There's Medicare fraud. There's the big, broad concept of financial elder abuse. Someone actually financially abusing you, taking your money, stealing your money, or having you use your money for their benefit. You might hear horror stories of, the handyman that befriends you and brings you to the bank and somehow gets his name on your bank account and then depletes your bank account. Or has you withdraw money and then that money somehow becomes misplaced. So there is things like that type of financial elder abuse. Some of the most common types of scams that you should look out for and make sure that your family members are looking out for. There's a bunch in 2020, and I'm going to go through some of the most common ones. So one of the first most common ones is an IRS scam, where a scammer calls unsolicited and impersonates an IRS officer saying that, you owe money to the IRS, you need to send a check directly here in order to pay off any debts that you might have, and they want you to do it as soon as possible. It's very important, or they're going to do all of these things. Well, your first red flag should be is that the IRS does not call you. I can barely get in touch with the IRS via the phone if I ever need to. So I've never received a call from the IRS directly, and they typically write. So if you did have either, unpaid taxes or any sort of IRS issue, they would be writing you a letter. They would not be calling you, and they typically would not be calling you and asking you for your social security number or any other information. So if the IRS is calling you, it's likely a scam. You should hang up, and if you are concerned that it's actually a true creditor or it is the IRS, I would hang up the phone, go on the website or go to your most recent tax bill or something of that sort and call the number directly for the IRS. Do not use whatever number they give you on the phone. Another common scam is a jury duty scam, where criminals call and impersonate local members of government and ask you for your personal information, such as your social security number, your address, phone numbers, date of birth, things of that nature, in order to prove your identity. The jury duty, when you get it, it's based on where you live, where you're registered to vote, and things of that nature. So they would not be calling you to prove your identity. If there are any concerns, that would already be handled, at the DMV, or whenever you register to vote. So again, that's not something that they would do. You should always be wary whenever someone is calling you and asking you for your social security number. I am always wary of giving my social security number out. You want to make sure it's needed for a specific purpose. You definitely don't want to write it in an email. So, if you do need to give anyone your social security number, you may want to do it over the phone, but you want to first confirm why they're asking for it. A good note is that you should never give your social security number and your driver's license ID at the same time. So if those two pieces of information are given together, it typically means that no one would ever ask you those two pieces of information at the same time. So that should be a red flag as well. Another common scam is lottery or contestant unclaimed winning scams. For instance, you get something in the mail stating that you've won $1 million, and if you want to claim your prize, you need to give your account number and routing number, or you need to give a deposit in order to get the amount of money. So I always like to think of it, if it sounds too good to be true, it most likely is too good to be true. So things like that, where you haven't done anything and you've received something to win $1 million, is probably a scam. You do not want to ever give your bank account information, your routing number, or any information to wire funds to your account out, because they can also wire funds out of your account. So it's very important to be careful when you're reviewing your mail. Often, or emails, sometimes that these winnings come through the email, or maybe a phone call saying that you've won a free cruise, and in order to claim your cruise you need to give a deposit and then they pay for the rest. Things like that you should be very careful of. Usually it comes from a strange phone number. It may, they might not leave a voicemail. Those are all things to look for when determining whether it's a scam. You also want to make sure you're reading the document that you received. So let's say you get one of those lottery winning letters. Often it might look, a little off. There may be some typographical errors. It may look like it was mailed, from a specific person individually, not a large company or something like that. These are all things to look at. If it's an email, often the emails have fake domains. So you always want to look at who the email was from. So the name that pops up might be actually different than the email address. The email address might, or the name might say John Smith, but the email address might be, a code of numbers from some strange email address. And that's a really good sign that it's most likely a scam. Another scam that we've seen more frequently is remote access scams, where someone will call you saying that they're from the computer company, Microsoft, or whatever security server you use for your computer, and they'll say that you have a virus on your computer and they need to remote into your computer in order to fix the virus. Well, there's actually no virus on your computer, and these people are now remoting in and can cause viruses on your computer and also take sensitive information. So if you have credit card numbers saved on your computer, if you have information saved, social security numbers, date of birth, addresses, bank account information, all that information saved on your computer, you need to be careful as to letting people remote into your computer. You want to make sure that if you are doing that, it's a reputable person, it's someone you have hired to remote into your computer, or it's the security company that you've hired. One of the, I think, most common senior scams, and one that my grandparents have had happen to them personally, is the grandparent scam, where someone calls your grandparents' phone and they're either pretending to be a grandchild or calling from a police department on behalf of the grandchild, saying your grandchild is in Mexico, they have had some run-in with the police or a legal issue, and you need to wire X amount of money in order to get them out of the prison or wherever they are, bail. You essentially need to send bail. And this often scares, grandparents, especially if it's a grandchild that might be abroad, might be away. You know, they automatically go into crisis mode. Okay, sure, anything to help my grandchild. This happened to my grandfather once. He called my brother Michael and said, "Mike, are you in Mexico?" And he said, "No, Grandpa, I'm in Queens, New York at law school." And he knew right away it was a scam. They called back a few times asking for the information, and he just kept hanging up. And it can be very, they can be very pushy when it comes to it. And if you don't have a good relationship with your grandchildren, or you have a very good relationship with them, but you may not be able to call them or may not think to call them, you could fall victim to that type of scam. So that is something you definitely want to be careful of. These type of phone calls can be very scary. So how can you tell if you're being scammed? What are some clear signs? So anything where you need to act right now, you need to wire money, you need to give information right now. Like I said, if there's typographical errors, if there's things that look off, if it doesn't sound right, if the person on the other line doesn't really know what they're talking about or is talking in circles, those might be reasons to believe that it's a scam. And what can you do to avoid these scams? So you always want to research a company before you give any personal information. You may want to call a loved one to discuss the situation before acting on it. So let's say you did get something in the mail from the IRS or a phone call from the IRS. You might want to give a call to your loved one or your accountant or anyone and be like, "Hey, I just got this weird phone call. Is this real?" I mean, I get them sometimes in the mail. Today I even got something for the domain, esslawfirm.com, saying our domain was bad. And I sent it right to our computer company because it could very well be a scam. So you need to be careful. You want to make sure you're going right to your typical source to ensure that it's not a scam. Sometimes having phone calls go to voicemail first might be helpful. There's a lot of robocalls out there, so typically if someone wants to talk to you, they will leave a voicemail. Oftentimes, scammers will not leave a voicemail. So if it rings and rings and never goes through to voicemail, it may be a scam. And again, if something seems too good to be true, typically it is. So don't fall victim to, $100,000. I wish someone would be giving us money like that, but unfortunately, it's not something we typically see. So be careful of things like that. So those are really, the situations, the scams that occur. What can you do if you do have a scam occur to you and you do send money or give information? You'll want to call your local police department. You may want to call Adult Protective Services. Depending on whether the individual who's been scammed has capacity or not, a guardianship may be needed. So if God forbid, your parent is scammed by someone and they're giving money, or if it's elder abuse, it's financial elder abuse, and like I said, that handyman is taking money from them, and mom and dad believe that this handyman is using the money, for their benefit or whatever the situation is. If mom and dad no longer have capacity or cannot handle their own financial affairs and are making bad financial decisions, a guardianship proceeding may be necessary, especially if that individual does not have a durable general power of attorney and has not already appointed someone to make financial decisions for them. We've talked about powers of attorney a lot in our prior sessions and our webinars. It's such an important document and can be so helpful when possible financial elder abuse is on the line. So how do we protect our loved ones against this type of abuse and scams? I think discussing these types of scams with your loved ones so they know what to look out for is very important. Having a conversation, being like, "Listen, these are the top scams of 2020. If you get a call with this type of information, do not give them anything. This is what you need to look out for." Again, it's really important to ensure constant contact with your loved ones. Make sure that you're calling them, you're speaking with them regularly. So if a change occurs, either in their bank account, their demeanor, their health, anything that might cause you to have concern, you're aware of it. It's very difficult to do that if your contact with the person is sporadic, because then you don't have a very good baseline as to what their normal is. Again, allowing calls to go to voicemail may be a good idea. You can probably weave out a lot of the scammers by allowing calls to go to voicemail, ensure that they don't, get you on the phone. Having Nest cameras or outdoor cameras installed so if people visit the house, a loved one would know. Some families have them inside the house as well, depending on whether, mom or dad or the loved one has dementia or may live alone. Some people like to have that type of comfort. And like I said, ensuring that the person has their estate planning in order can especially help in situations like this. A durable general power of attorney, which allows someone to handle your financial affairs on your behalf, is super important. It can help avoid someone, taking another person's money. And if someone does begin to coerce the individual, you would be able to have access to intercept that type of situation. It also avoids the need for a guardianship proceeding, which can be very costly, very time consuming, and a very difficult proceeding to do with a loved one. And it allows you to have access to someone else's finances and use their money in their best interest. There are so many different situations that could occur. I could talk about it for hours. But these are really the most common senior scams that we see and the way that we see elder abuse occur. So having conversations with your loved ones, stay in contact with them, make sure they're staying cool during this heat wave, and be careful yourself when answering the phone, answering emails, picking up the mail. It's a scary world out there, especially in the internet age. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this gave you some tips as to how to avoid senior scams, how to protect yourself and your loved ones. If you have any additional questions or are interested in doing any estate planning, my contact information my name again is Lauren Ania. I am an attorney at Ania, Scanlon, and Sirignano. We are an elder law and trust and estates law firm in White Plains, and we have offices in Somers, New York. We are doing consultations virtually via Zoom. We do have some select in-person meetings or can do socially distant outdoor meetings as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach me. The phone number is 914-948-1500, and my email address is l.ania@esslawfirm.com. I hope you all continue to stay safe and be well, and we look forward to seeing you tune in next week. Thank you, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.